Imagine a king who built an empire on fear, whose name was synonymous with cruelty, and whose death was more terrifying than the most gruesome horror story. Herod the Great, ruler of Judea, a man who shaped his kingdom with colossal architecture, also tore apart his own family in a reign of terror. His final days were filled with paranoia, betrayal, and unimaginable suffering. The man who had once commanded armies, built wonders, and conquered hearts now lay in decay, his body ravaged by illness, infested by maggots, and his mind consumed by madness. His story is a stark reminder that power, built on violence and mistrust, only leads to self-destruction. Ready to hear the full, chilling tale of Herod's downfall? Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dark Rotten Era, and let us know your thoughts. Like, share, and comment below. Herod wasn't born into royalty. The son of Antipater, an Idumean, he was far from the ideal candidate to rule Judea. Yet, through sheer ruthlessness and a strategic alliance with Rome, he seized the throne in 37 BCE. Herod's first taste of power came after a brutal civil war, where he executed his rival Antigonus and secured Roman favor. Despite his rise, he was always seen as an outsider by the Jewish elite, viewed as a Roman puppet. The insecurity of never being fully accepted shaped his reign, fostering paranoia and cruelty in every decision he made. Herod learned early that to survive, he had to be both a politician and a merciless ruler, willing to switch allegiances to stay on top. His cruelty wasn't just a byproduct of ambition, it was his survival strategy. Herod ruled with an iron fist, where fear was his most trusted ally. His kingdom, built through monumental structures and military conquests, was a fortress of tyranny. Those closest to him were often in danger, as no one was beyond suspicion. The people of Judea feared their king, not only for his political maneuvers, but for the brutality he inflicted upon those closest to him. His paranoia led to the execution of his beloved wife Mariamne, her mother, and 2 of his sons. Augustus, the Roman emperor, once quipped, "It is safer to be Herod's pig than his son," acknowledging the king's ruthless treatment of his family. Herod's reign was defined by terror. He was a king who trusted no one, and his cruelty knew no bounds. Herod's love for Mariamne, his Hasmonean wife, was deep, but in the twisted mind of Herod, love and suspicion intertwined. Rumors, likely false, suggested that Mariamne was plotting against him. In a fit of paranoia, Herod ordered her execution. The execution of Mariamne marked the beginning of a wave of bloodshed. Herod was reportedly struck with grief after her death, unable to cope with what he had done. He cried out for her, unable to reverse the irrevocable decision. His grief turned into madness, and the executions of his family members followed. His 2 sons, Alexander and Aristobulus, were executed for treason, though their crime was no more than the suspicion of being a threat to Herod's reign. Herod's personal tragedy became the catalyst for the unraveling of his dynasty. As Herod entered his 60s, his body began to fail him. What started as a minor illness gradually transformed into a grotesque and horrifying ordeal. The first signs were subtle, a persistent fever and mild stomach pains. But as weeks passed, the symptoms grew unbearable. Herod's physicians, trained in Greek medicine, could not diagnose the ailment. They tried various treatments, diet changes, bloodletting, and even baths, yet none of it worked. Herod's body began to decay from the inside, yet his mind remained sharp. He could feel his own body betraying him as the illness advanced. His abdomen swelled, his appetite vanished, and pain racked his body. It was the beginning of the slow, agonizing death that would haunt Herod until his final breath. His body, once the epitome of strength and power, became his prison. As Herod's illness progressed, a gangrene infection began to spread throughout his body. The disease, likely caused by a severe infection of the kidneys or intestines, caused his flesh to rot while he still lived. Josephus, the Jewish historian, described Herod's condition in terrifying detail. The king's genitals became inflamed, his flesh decayed, and the stench was unbearable. Modern medical experts believe Herod suffered from Fournier's gangrene, a rapidly spreading bacterial infection that destroys tissue. The once great king was reduced to a helpless victim of his own body, unable to control the decay that ravaged him. His physicians could do little to stop the infection. The stench of his rotting flesh filled the palace, and even his servants couldn't bear to stay in the room for long. Herod's disease had become a horror show. His body was decaying, and with it, his reign. As Herod's body continued to fail him, he remained trapped within it. His skin began to turn black, his body bloated, and his organs began to shut down. He was a king no longer, but a living corpse. The pain was excruciating, yet his mind remained clear. Herod could feel every moment of his body's decay. His genitals became infested with maggots, a grotesque sign of the gangrene consuming him. Herod's physicians were desperate but helpless. As his body deteriorated, his paranoia grew. He continued to issue death orders from his sickbed, unsure of who to trust or who to betray. Even as his body collapsed, his need for control never wavered. He knew his end was near, but he could not accept it. His fear of death drove him to one final monstrous act. In his final days, Herod's paranoia reached its peak. He ordered that, upon his death, the Jewish elders in Jericho be executed. He knew that no one would mourn him, so he devised a plan to ensure there would be mourning in the land. "If they will not weep for me, they shall weep for their own," he decreed. He ordered his sister Salome to assemble the elders under the pretense of a royal summons, with the promise of a royal favor. But Herod's plan was far darker. He wanted the elders executed so that the nation would mourn his death. Even in the face of his own demise, Herod sought to control how his death would be remembered. His cruelty extended beyond death itself. He would continue to spread fear even in his final moments. In a final attempt to save himself, Herod's physicians proposed a journey to the hot springs of Calo near the Dead Sea. The springs were famed for their supposed healing properties. Desperate, Herod agreed to the journey, even though it meant enduring excruciating pain. Carried in a litter, Herod was surrounded by guards and attendants, his body swelling and decaying with every movement. The journey, which should have taken a day, stretched on for several days, as the pain was unbearable. When they finally reached the hot springs, Herod was lowered into the water, but the heat caused him more agony. He screamed in pain, and the attendants panicked, pulling him from the water. His body convulsed violently, and for a moment, they thought he had died. The supposed cure had only made his suffering worse, and with it, his final hope vanished. In his final moments, Herod's body was in utter collapse. His abdomen was bloated, his skin had turned black, and his body emitted a putrid odor. Yet his mind remained sharp enough to understand the gravity of his situation. The once feared king, who had ruled with absolute power, was now reduced to a helpless figure, lying in filth, surrounded by death. He attempted suicide in a last-ditch effort to escape his suffering, but his attendants stopped him. His body, still clinging to life, endured even more pain. In his delirium, Herod's mind was still consumed with paranoia, and when he heard that his son Antipater had rejoiced at the thought of his death, he ordered the boy's execution. Even in his final moments, Herod's cruelty knew no bounds. Herod's death came as a relief to those around him. His body, once the vessel of power, was now a decaying corpse that terrified even his most loyal servants. The palace, once filled with the sounds of fear and intrigue, now echoed with silence. Herod's body was prepared for burial, but his decomposition was so advanced that it became a task few were willing to undertake. His final resting place was the Herodium, his self-built tomb, where his body was sealed away. Yet even in death, Herod's legacy continued. His dynasty crumbled, and his kingdom, once so powerful, fell into chaos. The irony of his life and death is not lost. He who sought immortality through monuments and fear found that in the end, nothing lasts forever. Herod the Great's reign, filled with grandeur and cruelty, ultimately collapsed under the weight of his own paranoia and violent actions. His story serves as a chilling reminder that power gained through terror and mistrust cannot last forever. As his body decayed, so did his empire, unraveling piece by piece. The tyrant who sought to immortalize himself through monuments and fear left behind a legacy of death, destruction, and regret. If you found this tale of power, betrayal, and decay fascinating, don't forget to subscribe to the Dark Rotten Era. Hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us keep bringing these gripping tales to life. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more chilling stories from the past. Like, share, and comment to show your love for dark history.